The summer of 2006 in Santa Fe had started like any other, warm sunlight painting the adobe buildings in golden hues, children laughing as they ran through the plaza, and neighbors greeting each other with familiar smiles. Yet beneath the town's tranquil surface, a shadow lingered, an unresolved mystery that had haunted one family for nearly a decade. Isabella Moreno, a 24-year-old elementary school teacher, had vanished without a trace one late April evening. Her absence was first felt as a cold, nagging worry by her parents, Elena and Ricardo, who couldn't understand why she hadn't returned from a short walk to meet a friend. Hours stretched into days, days into weeks, and every unanswered call deepened the gnawing sense that something was terribly wrong. The local police had scoured the streets, questioned neighbors, and followed every lead they could find at the time. But Isabella seemed to have dissolved into the city itself, leaving only memories and unanswered questions. In the days following her disappearance, the town rallied in support, candlelight vigils and search parties forming in a desperate attempt to bring her home. Flyers with her smiling face were plastered on every lamp post and bulletin board, her bright eyes reflecting hope that seemed increasingly fragile. Neighbors whispered theories in hushed tones. Was it a kidnapping? A runaway? The community's imagination was vivid, yet fear and frustration were palpable. The Moreno family endured sleepless nights, poring over every detail of Isabella's routines, replaying phone conversations, retracing steps in hope of clues that had escaped initial investigation. Each day that passed without answers felt heavier than the last, the weight of uncertainty pressing on their hearts like an unyielding stone. Elena, especially, felt the ache of not knowing, her grief a constant companion, though she held herself together for Ricardo and their younger son, Mateo. Investigators at the time had pursued every tangible lead. They interviewed friends, checked phone records, and canvassed local businesses. There were fleeting moments of hope, an anonymous tip here, a shadowy figure reported there, but nothing concrete materialized. The case gradually slipped into the cold files, a tragic reminder of how some disappearances leave more questions than answers. Yet the case never truly left the minds of those closest to Isabella. Over the years, the Morenos clung to her memory, celebrating her birthdays quietly at home, placing flowers at the spot near her apartment where she had been last seen, and sharing stories of her kindness, humor, and the light she brought into their lives. The years did not diminish their love, nor the desperation for resolution. By 2015, technology had evolved in ways that the initial investigation could never have anticipated. DNA analysis had become more precise, with national databases expanding and new methods emerging that could identify connections long considered impossible. Detective Lena Ortiz, now leading the cold case unit, reviewed Isabella's file with fresh eyes. Every photograph, every statement, and every scrap of evidence was meticulously re-examined. Among these items was a single piece of crucial evidence, a discarded glove found near the trail Isabella often walked. It had been bagged, logged, and set aside in 2006, overlooked due to the limited capabilities of DNA testing at the time. Ortiz, recognizing its potential now, sent it for advanced testing. Weeks later, the results arrived, revealing a partial DNA profile. The profile matched an individual already in the national database, someone with a criminal record spanning minor offenses and disturbing patterns of predatory behavior. The revelation electrified the investigation. It was the first tangible lead in years, a thread they could finally pull to unravel the mystery that had consumed the Morenos for nearly a decade. The shock of this discovery rippled through the Morenos family. Elena could hardly breathe as Detective Ortiz called to share the breakthrough. After all these years, a name, a face, a link to their daughter's disappearance finally emerged. Ricardo held his wife tightly, tears streaming down both their faces, a mingling of grief and hope they hadn't felt in years. The possibility of closure, long deferred, now hovered just within reach. Investigators immediately mobilized, reviewing the suspect's history, habits, and potential connection to Isabella. They revisited locations, interviewed associates, and traced movements from the night she vanished. What had been a cold trail suddenly ignited into a web of evidence, each thread connecting the suspect more closely to the events of that fateful night in April 2006. Every revelation brought clarity to details that had once seemed inexplicable. The reports of a figure seen near her apartment, the muffled sounds heard by a neighbor, even the sense of unease that Isabella had expressed in the days prior to her disappearance. The DNA result had transformed speculation into actionable intelligence, breathing new life into a case long considered dormant. As the investigation gained momentum, the community's attention rekindled. Residents of Santa Fe, many of whom remembered Isabella fondly from her teaching and local involvement, followed the developments with bated breath. Articles appeared in local newspapers, recounting the long struggle of the Moreno family and the persistence of law enforcement in pursuing justice. Detective Ortiz's team worked tirelessly, balancing the delicate task of building a case that would hold up in court, while ensuring the Morenos were shielded from the most harrowing details until absolutely necessary. Every new discovery was a step closer to resolution, a delicate dance between patience, strategy, and the relentless pursuit of truth. Even small pieces of evidence, phone records, traffic camera footage, and witness statements, were revisited with the knowledge that each could illuminate aspects of the night Isabella disappeared, finally giving her story the clarity it deserved. The breakthrough also unearthed a chilling realization. Isabella's abduction was not random. The suspect had been meticulously observing her routines, identifying moments of vulnerability, and exploiting the trust of those around her. It was a sinister puzzle, one that investigators pieced together with painstaking care, analyzing patterns and cross-referencing data that had previously seemed unrelated. Each new insight painted a more complete picture of the events that led to her disappearance, revealing the calculated nature of the crime and the depth of the deception involved. The community, once lulled into a sense of safety, now grappled with the unsettling truth that such predatory behavior could exist so quietly among them, hidden behind ordinary appearances and mundane routines. Yet within this revelation was also the vindication of patience and diligence, showing that even after years, the truth had a way of surfacing, waiting to be uncovered by those unwilling to let go. The Morenos, while bracing for the difficult journey ahead, found renewed strength in knowing that justice was attainable. They met with Detective Ortiz and the investigative team, discussing potential outcomes, courtroom procedures, and the evidence that would soon bring clarity. Every meeting, every conversation, reinforced the reality that Isabella's story was finally emerging from the shadows, no longer trapped in uncertainty. Friends and extended family rallied around them, offering support, comfort, and encouragement, creating a network of resilience to withstand the emotional turbulence yet to come. The anticipation of confronting the past and holding the person responsible accountable was daunting, yet the Morenos understood that this confrontation was necessary, a crucial step in honoring Isabella's life and ensuring that her legacy would be preserved through the pursuit of justice. The days following the DNA breakthrough were a whirlwind of activity. Detective Lena Ortiz and her team moved with precision, knowing that time was critical. Every lead was scrutinized, every connection meticulously verified. The suspect, a man named Darren Whitmore, had a past that hinted at dangerous tendencies, but nothing that directly linked him to Isabella Moreno's disappearance, until now. The DNA evidence had changed everything, and investigators knew they had to act carefully to ensure that the case would hold in court. Ortiz revisited every witness statement from 2006, comparing memories with new insights, and even small inconsistencies began to make sense in the context of Whitmore's known behaviors. Each step brought Isabella closer to justice, but it also forced the team to confront the chilling reality of how long she had suffered in the shadows. For the Moreno family, this period was emotionally complex. The relief that someone had been identified was intertwined with fear and anxiety over the coming confrontation. Elena found herself unable to sleep, haunted by the possibility of reliving the trauma in court, but she also clung to the hope that seeing justice served would finally allow her heart to breathe again. Ricardo spent nights poring over old photographs and letters, remembering Isabella's laughter, the way she had taught Matteo to ride a bike, her gentle guidance in the classroom, and the warmth of family dinners she had cherished. Every memory was bittersweet, a reminder of what had been lost and what might finally be reclaimed through accountability. Matteo, though young when his sister disappeared, now understood the gravity of the situation in ways that were difficult for a child to process. But he drew strength from the resilience of his parents and the persistence of Detective Ortiz's team. The investigation took a dramatic turn when additional forensic evidence came to light. Investigators discovered that Whitmore had frequent contact with a storage unit located near Isabella's apartment complex in 2006. This information had been overlooked in the original investigation, dismissed as irrelevant. But with the DNA match confirming his potential involvement, every overlooked detail became crucial. Surveillance footage from nearby streets, long archived and ignored, was re-examined and revealed subtle, but telling movements. Whitmore's car seen parked near Isabella's route, patterns consistent with someone studying her routines. The detective team meticulously charted these movements, building a timeline that placed him within striking distance of Isabella on the day she vanished. The weight of these revelations was staggering. After nearly a decade, the fragments of truth began aligning into a clear and undeniable story. One of the most heart-wrenching discoveries came from Isabella's own journals. Carefully preserved by Elena, these personal notes revealed Isabella's increasing unease in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. She wrote about a sense of being followed, subtle encounters with a man who always seemed to appear in her periphery, and an intuition that something was off. These entries, once dismissed as the musings of a cautious young woman, now took on a haunting significance. They painted a vivid picture of Isabella's growing fear and underscored the meticulous nature of Whitmore's predation. For Elena and Ricardo, reading these words was both painful and validating. Painful because they relived their daughter's terror, validating because they confirmed what their hearts had always known. Isabella's instincts were never wrong, and now they had proof. The small town of Santa Fe watched the developments with a mix of anticipation and disbelief. Many had long assumed that Isabella's disappearance would remain unsolved, a tragic story frozen in time. Yet, as news of the DNA match spread, the community rallied again, not in mourning, but in cautious hope that justice was finally within reach. Local journalists chronicled the painstaking efforts of Detective Ortiz's team, highlighting the careful balance of forensic science, investigative diligence, and tireless advocacy that had resurrected the case from cold storage. Every article, every news segment, emphasized the extraordinary persistence required to solve a crime so old, underscoring the notion that even in cases where years pass, truth has a way of emerging. Community members who had once participated in search parties joined vigils and memorials anew, this time to honor the journey toward justice rather than the uncertainty of loss. As investigators closed in on Whitmore, tension mounted. Detectives worked to secure a warrant, carefully avoiding any missteps that could compromise the case. Surveillance and background checks revealed that he had continued to live in the same region, a shadowy figure blending into the everyday life of the city. He frequented the same coffee shops, grocery stores, and parks, completely unaware that his past actions were about to catch up with him. This proximity heightened the urgency for the Moreno family, who feared that even now, there might be risks they could not foresee. Ortiz's team coordinated with local law enforcement to ensure that the eventual arrest would be safe, controlled, and definitive. Every measure taken was a reflection of years of experience, an acknowledgement that the culmination of a decade-long investigation required both precision and compassion. Then came the night that changed everything. Whitmore was apprehended quietly at his residence, taken into custody without incident. The Moreno family, who had been briefed about the arrest, experienced a whirlwind of emotions: relief, disbelief, and an overwhelming sense of closure mixed with sorrow for the years Isabella had been gone. When Detective Ortiz informed them that the DNA evidence would serve as the cornerstone of the case, and that additional corroborating evidence from the storage unit and surveillance footage strengthened the prosecution, Elena and Ricardo felt a profound sense of vindication. The man who had haunted their lives for so long was finally held accountable. Yet even in this moment of triumph, they were acutely aware of the scars left by the years of uncertainty, and they knew that true healing would take time, patience, and the acknowledgement of all they had endured. During the initial questioning, Whitmore's demeanor revealed cracks in a facade that had previously seemed impenetrable. He initially denied any involvement, but inconsistencies in his account, coupled with the mounting physical evidence, created pressure he could not withstand. Investigators documented every response, noting the subtle signs of evasion and contradiction. They understood that these moments were pivotal, potentially leading to confessions or admissions that would solidify the case in court. The psychological weight of nearly a decade's worth of scrutiny bore down on Whitmore, a silent reminder that no one could evade accountability indefinitely. Meanwhile, the Moreno family followed every report, every update, understanding that the resolution they had longed for was now unfolding before their eyes in painstaking detail, layer by layer, truth by truth. Whitmore's eventual confession, though limited, sent shockwaves through the community. He admitted to being in the vicinity of Isabella's disappearance and acknowledged a pattern of behavior consistent with predatory observation. While the full extent of his actions would be revealed only in court, the admission confirmed what investigators had painstakingly pieced together and validated the suspicions that had lingered in the hearts of the Moreno family for years. The confession was not just a turning point in the legal sense. It was an emotional release for the family, a confirmation that the long, harrowing search for answers was not in vain. For Elena, hearing his voice confess, even partially, brought a mixture of anger, sorrow, and relief, a cathartic moment that would forever mark the journey toward justice. The culmination of evidence, confession, and community support prepared the stage for the eventual trial, promising a reckoning that had been almost unimaginable in 2006. Investigators, prosecutors, and the Moreno family understood that this process would be emotionally taxing, but necessary. The path forward was clear. The truth of Isabella's story would be presented, the narrative of her disappearance laid bare, and the man responsible would finally face the consequences of his actions. In the quiet moments, Elena and Ricardo allowed themselves fleeting glimpses of hope, imagining a future where Isabella's memory could be honored not only through mourning, but through the knowledge that her story had been told fully, honestly, and with justice served. The weeks leading up to the trial were a storm of emotions for everyone involved. Elena and Ricardo Moreno found themselves oscillating between moments of calm hope and crushing anxiety. The courtroom loomed ahead like a distant yet inevitable storm, a place where memories, evidence, and emotions would collide. Detective Lena Ortiz remained a steady presence, her reassurance both practical and human. She reminded the family that the painstaking work over the last decade had built a case impossible to ignore, but the weight of anticipation was undeniable. Each day brought media inquiries, legal preparations, and quiet reflections that were heavy with the ghosts of the past. Isabella's absence was a constant, aching void, yet her presence was felt in every detail, every photograph, every piece of evidence meticulously gathered over years of persistence. The trial began with a tense silence. Witnesses took the stand, recounting events from 2006, their memories now sharpened by the clarity provided by forensic breakthroughs and investigative diligence. Detective Ortiz's testimony was methodical and compelling, laying out the timeline of Isabella's disappearance, the overlooked leads from the original investigation, and the crucial DNA match that had reignited the case. The jury listened intently as small-town neighbors recounted brief, but telling encounters with Darren Whitmore, painting a picture of someone who had been a silent observer in the lives of those around him. Every detail, once thought inconsequential, now formed a mosaic of truth, revealing how close Isabella had come to being lost to memory entirely. The courtroom was heavy with the weight of history, a decade of unanswered questions finally being addressed in stark, unflinching clarity. The Moreno family sat together, drawing strength from one another as evidence was laid bare. Elena clutched Ricardo's hand during the more harrowing testimonies, and even Mateo, now a young adult, absorbed the proceedings with a mix of awe and pain. The prosecution emphasized the psychological manipulation and predatory behavior that had allowed Whitmore to evade suspicion for so long, juxtaposed with the meticulous science that had finally identified him as Isabella's abductor. The narrative unfolded with precision, each revelation a step toward justice and closure. For the family, it was both cathartic and excruciating. Cathartic because the truth was finally emerging, excruciating because it demanded they relive the horror of Isabella's final days. Yet, beneath the grief was a glimmer of relief, the knowledge that the person responsible would face the consequences. Unexpected twists during the trial kept the courtroom tense. New witnesses, previously overlooked, came forward to testify about interactions with Whitmore that, at the time, seemed mundane or irrelevant. A former coworker revealed a pattern of obsessive behavior toward women in the community, details that had never been connected to Isabella's case until now. A neighbor came forward with recollections of seeing Whitmore near Isabella's apartment on multiple occasions, something that had gone unnoticed in the chaos of 2006. These late revelations complicated the defense's narrative, making it increasingly clear that the depth of Whitmore's actions had been far greater than anyone had imagined. For the Moreno family, the twists reinforced the painstaking thoroughness of the investigation and validated the years of hope and despair they had endured. The emotional impact of the trial extended beyond the courtroom. In the community, residents followed the proceedings closely, remembering Isabella not just as a victim, but as a vibrant young woman whose absence had left an enduring mark. Public vigils were held in her honor, blending sorrow with a sense of collective catharsis. Teachers, friends, and former classmates shared memories of Isabella's kindness and intellect, painting a portrait of a life full of promise, tragically interrupted. The small town of Cedar Ridge, long haunted by questions and suspicions, now bore witness to a reckoning that transcended fear and uncertainty. It was a reminder that even in the smallest communities, the pursuit of justice could persist across decades, fueled by dedication, science, and unyielding resolve. As the trial drew to its climax, the defense's attempts to discredit the DNA evidence and witness testimonies faltered. The meticulous documentation and forensic confirmation left little room for doubt. Whitmore's demeanor during cross-examination revealed mounting frustration, his carefully constructed defenses eroding under the weight of incontrovertible evidence. Detective Ortiz's team had prepared meticulously for every angle, ensuring that even minor discrepancies from the past did not weaken the case. When the prosecution presented a final compilation of Isabella's journals, the storage unit evidence, and the surveillance footage, the courtroom was struck by the chilling clarity of the story. The pattern of predation, the manipulation, and the eventual capture of a man who had once seemed untouchable. The jury, attentive and visibly affected, absorbed every detail, the narrative unfolding like a suspenseful yet devastatingly real drama. Verdict day brought a mixture of tension and relief. The Moreno family, flanked by friends and supporters, entered the courtroom with hearts heavy but determined. Each passing hour seemed to stretch, every word from the judge and jury magnified by years of anticipation. Finally, the foreperson stood to deliver the verdict, and the room held its collective breath. Guilty. The single word reverberated through the courtroom, ending nearly 2 decades of uncertainty and fear. Elena wept openly, Ricardo's hands shook as he held hers, and Matteo felt a surge of emotions that combined grief, relief, and the beginnings of closure. Whitmore remained silent, the weight of years finally catching up with him, the consequences of his actions rendered undeniable. Justice, long delayed, had been served. The aftermath of the trial rippled through every layer of the community. For the Moreno family, the verdict was a bittersweet victory, an acknowledgement that Isabella's life had been taken but her story had been reclaimed. They engaged in therapy and community support groups, seeking healing from the trauma that had shadowed them for years. Detective Ortiz continued her work, but she often reflected on Isabella's case as a testament to persistence, forensic innovation, and the human capacity for hope. News outlets chronicled the final resolution, emphasizing how science and unwavering determination could bring closure even after nearly 2 decades. Isabella's friends and former students honored her memory through scholarships and local initiatives, ensuring that her legacy of kindness and intelligence endured beyond the tragedy. As the sun set over Cedar Ridge, the town felt a quiet release, a collective exhale after years of lingering fear and unanswered questions. For Elena, Ricardo, and Matteo, the journey toward justice was not just legal, it was profoundly personal. Isabella's memory was now honored in truth, her story told fully and openly, and her absence acknowledged with the dignity she deserved. The arrest, trial, and conviction of Darren Whitmore closed a painful chapter but opened a new one where remembrance, healing, and justice coexisted. For a community that had lived in the shadow of uncertainty for so long, the resolution served as a reminder that truth, though sometimes delayed, would eventually shine through, illuminating even the darkest corners of the past. The story of Isabella Moreno, once a haunting mystery, had finally found its rightful place in history, leaving a legacy of resilience, justice, and hope that would endure for generations.